The Bible speaks with such compelling beauty about forgiveness. But what do we do when the very people who should love us the most, our close friends, loved ones, or even our church community, become the source of our deepest pain? It's a uniquely confusing and sorrowful place to be. So today, let's turn together to a man in Scripture who knew this pain intimately. And then we'll consider 4 steps that we might take to find a real and lasting peace, even if the apology we long for never comes. I'm also going to share some resources that have personally helped me the most, including what might be the best sermon I've ever heard on the topic. Be sure to stick around toward the end so you don't miss that. So here's the first step. Acknowledge the unique pain of broken trust. There's a next level, agonizing sting when a wound comes from our inner circle. The deeper the relationship, the deeper the rupture. You were hurt by someone you trusted, and that cuts deep. Betrayal at this level is so much more than disagreement. It registers in the soul like a violent gut punch. When this happens within our Christian community, the pain is further amplified by spiritual confusion. We find ourselves wondering, how can this be? Aren't we supposed to love, bear with, and forgive one another as Christ has done for us? Did people do this to each other in the Bible? Well, they sure did. Consider Joseph in the book of Genesis. His full story is in chapters 37 through 50, where Joseph's own brothers, consumed by anger and jealousy, tossed him into a pit and then sold him into slavery. They stripped him of his dignity, his freedom, his family, and life as he knew it. What comes next for Joseph is not a neat and tidy act of forgiveness. What comes next for him is the grief of betrayal, loss, and years of lonely suffering. So if you're here today, and if you're carrying the weight of a wound from your family or your community, I want to spend the rest of our time trying to convince you that God sees and intends to redeem your pain, just as he saw and redeemed Joseph from the darkness of that pit. Now here's the second step. Because this experience is so painful, we have to understand what forgiveness actually is and what it isn't. Whenever the topic of these deep personal wounds arises, the word forgiveness is never far behind. And honestly, for many of us, it can land with the weight of a crushing expectation. We labor under the misconception that to forgive means we have to pretend the offense never happened, or that we're obligated to immediately trust the person who broke our hearts. But that's not the essence of biblical forgiveness. Forgiveness, according to Scripture, is not forgetting. It's not excusing harmful behavior. And this one's crucial. Forgiveness is not the same thing as reconciliation. At its core, forgiveness is a vertical transaction between you and God before it's ever a horizontal one between you and other people. It's the conscious choice to release others from the debt you feel that they owe you. And in doing so, you release your own heart from the poison of bitterness. It's a declaration that you will no longer allow other people's actions to define your present peace or steal your future peace. It's a profound step you take for your own soul. Corrie ten Boom, who survived a Nazi concentration camp, said it this way: "Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the door of resentment and the handcuffs of hatred." Joseph, it seems, had forgiven his brothers in his heart long before he ever saw them again. He chose freedom from bitterness over a thirst for revenge. That same choice is available to you right now, regardless of whether the other person ever takes ownership for how they hurt you. So after you've made the brave, difficult choice to forgive, does that mean everything with this person or group has to return to the way that it was? No, it absolutely does not mean that. Which brings us to a third step. Understand that forgiveness is a unilateral act of grace, but reconciliation is bilateral. It requires 2 people, both of whom have demonstrated a new and healthier pattern in the relationship that can be trusted. While forgiveness is immediate when there's been a rupture, trust takes time to rebuild. This is where the conversation about setting healthy boundaries comes in. Some believers worry that setting boundaries is somehow sub-Christian, but it's actually an act of responsible biblical stewardship of your own heart. Proverbs 4:23 counsels us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. There are times when guarding your heart means creating a calm but clear distance between yourself and people or groups who consistently cause you harm, even when those people are family. You can forgive someone from afar. You can pray for their well-being from afar. Let's look again at Joseph. When his brothers were desperate and sought his help many years later, he did not throw open the doors for a welcome home celebration right away. First, Joseph took a season to test them. He needed to see for himself if their hearts had been genuinely changed through their trials before he could wisely and safely welcome them back into relationship. Forgiveness opens the door to peace in your own heart, but the wise use of healthy and hopefully temporary boundaries are what protect that peace. I know this is an incredibly difficult path. If you feel you could use more support, I want to recommend 2 books to start with. One is called Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. This book is the gold standard on the subject. And the second is also a modern classic on the topic of forgiveness. It's called Forgive and Forget by Lewis Smedes. Smedes writes with incredible wisdom about the stages of forgiveness and how to navigate healing when you've been deeply and unfairly hurt. It's a resource that affirms that your pain is real while showing a practical path toward freedom. And finally, the 4th and most powerful step you can take is to embrace that your peace does not depend on your receiving an apology. It's not held hostage to that. The most clarifying moment in Joseph's entire story comes at the very end. After all the pain and separation, he looks at his brothers, the very men who betrayed and sold him into slavery, and he says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Notice where Joseph finds his peace. It wasn't in their apology or their brokenness and contrition. He found it by trusting in the sovereign plan of God, who works all things together for good for those who love him, including the excruciatingly hard things we have to go through. For proof of this, all we need to do is look at the cross of Jesus. Joseph came to understand that his story was infinitely bigger than his family's betrayal. And your story is too. Your healing is not contingent on other people grasping or affirming the depth of your hurt. Your wholeness is not on hold, waiting for them to finally say they're sorry. Your peace is found when you surrender the entire messy, hurtful, yucky situation to God. He is the one who will take the shattered pieces of what you've experienced as evil and weave it into a beautiful story of redemption for your ultimate good and His everlasting glory. God is your defender, your healer, and the true source of the safe, protected, life-giving, unconditional love your heart is searching for and was made for. And now, as promised, here is the best sermon I've ever heard on this subject. It's from my good friend David Nasser. Just Google Crosspoint TV, David Nasser, forgiveness, and it will take you right to the sermon. Now, if this message resonated with you, I hope you'll subscribe and perhaps share it with someone you know who might be walking a similar road. And I pray that you will always remember, Jesus will never leave or forsake you.